What if I told you the most valuable lessons I learned at Yale had nothing to do with lectures, textbooks, or grades? I went to one of the most prestigious universities in the world. And today, I'm gonna save you 4 years of college and over $250,000 in tuition by sharing the 7 most impactful things I walked away with when I got my Yale degree. Be sure to stick around for the last 3 because those are by far the most important. GPA isn't everything. Most students didn't prioritize academics, and maybe you shouldn't either. I remember this one Yale senior who I only saw like 2 days a week. And finally, when I spoke to him, I was like, where are you? Why are you so hard to find? And it turns out he literally wasn't on campus because he would commute to New York 3 or 4 days a week and work at LinkedIn while he was still a full-time student at Yale. Here's the thing. The moment you get into college, your next existential crisis is finding a job. Weirdly enough, the classes you take, they're not really related to getting hired. In fact, ask any employer, and I promise they'll tell you they care way more about how you perform during the interview process and your work experience than your transcript, than your grades. Now, that's not necessarily true for grad school. Of course, if you want to become a doctor, lawyer, professor, you're gonna need a pretty awesome GPA. But if you want to be an awesome software engineer, banker, entrepreneur, then you need some real world experience. So instead of maxing out and taking the hardest classes possible, take what we at Yale call guts. I am saying that balance is key, and entire semesters, guys, they're won and or lost during shopping period when you first pick courses. So make sure that you guys have a balanced schedule that gives you more time to do more than just school at your new school. If you're interested in finance, spend an extra hour or 2 a week on LinkedIn networking. Instead of taking the hardest econ class possible, take like a medium level one and spend those extra hours on LinkedIn networking. Get in touch with alumni from your school. Turn those coffee chats into internships. If you're interested in CS, focus on creating banger projects and getting really good at those coding challenges they use to screen applicants. The main idea here, don't waste your time at school only studying. Next up, learn to read people fast. In college, the people around you, they'll shape your future more than any class. Learning to spot character quickly was one of the most powerful skills I walked away with. Some of the most stressful years of my life were a result of bad decision-making, specifically because I chose a poor first co-founder. Now, I was determined not to make that mistake the second time around when I co-founded the Elevated School. So I remembered my dear friend, Jeff. And the reason Jeff stuck with me is because I remember him coming to join us for a breakdance session one, Wednesday night in the dorm dance studio in Silliman, of all places. And I kid you not, Jeff showed up with a notebook, pen, and paper, and he was taking notes religiously while we were just spinning on our heads and doing handstands. That attention to detail stuck with me. And even though Jeff doesn't breakdance anymore, he's my co-founder, and he's one of the most influential people in my life. And it was all because I saw him taking notes. He's 3 years younger than me, and I just thought to myself, I need to keep this man in my life. Another thing that shocked me at Yale was at my secret society, my last year, I was having all these deep conversations with some of my close friends, and so many of them had been in terrible relationships, abusive ones, or they had just stuck, with a bad boyfriend or girlfriend for way too long. Guys, after I graduated, I read this groundbreaking book called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, and I wish Yale had taught me this. The author, Dr. Gottman, he opens the book by mentioning he could predict divorce rates with a 90% accuracy. How? By watching couples argue. Here are the 4 horsemen of conflict: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, or a failure to take responsibility, and stonewalling. Please, if you learn anything from this video, learn what these terms mean, learn how to identify them, and I promise you will avoid years of pain in any business or romantic relationship. One of the best ways to suss out if someone can actually walk the walk and not just talk the talk is by spending 24 hours glued to them. From the moment they wake up, spend your meals with them, see how they work, see what bothers them. You especially want to see how they react, of course, to uncomfortable situations. I mean, you wouldn't get married to someone without moving in with them first, right? So same thing for a really close friend or business partner. You will really want to see what they're made of. Nothing will tell you more about someone's character than when they're really at a low and they're dealing with a lot of conflict. That's when you see what people are truly made of. And if you see something good, stick with that person for a long, long time. Lesson number 3, swim against the current. Do what 99% of people avoid. That's how you end up in the top 1%. Becoming a YouTuber and starting elevated was not part of my 5-year plan upon graduating from Yale. Back when I was a sophomore, I actually got roped into entrepreneurship against my will. One day, a dear friend of mine comes to Yale for a squash tournament, and he's 2 years ahead of me. He's at U Chicago, and he signs me up for a startup competition against my will to pitch his idea, which was pretty interesting at the time. It was a food tech startup called Home Cooked that let you book home-cooked meals made by people in your neighborhood. But instead of takeout or delivery, you would actually physically go to their home, sit down, and eat with them. It wasn't just a way to eat delicious food, but also nourish the soul through human connection and conversation. I hated this idea. I said it was never gonna work. There were a bunch of legal issues. Also, I wanted to be a banker, consultant, get a steady income, support my family. Cool idea. Please leave me out of it. Thank you very much. This guy, he still signs me up for the competition and ends up leaving Yale. So now I'm pitching his idea to the Yale startup community. And actually, it turns out people really vibed with it. Years later, we ended up applying to a bunch of competitions. That's how I became co-founder of Home Cooked, which is a whole other saga. I'll leave that for another video. But that business totally failed. And because I made every single mistake in the book, from hiring to accounting to marketing, this second business, elevated, is so successful. Looking back on it now, I'm genuinely so thankful that I made all those mistakes while still a teenager with the safety net of college. And honestly, today, my work, doing this, it gives me something no other job can offer: freedom. My senior year, I still applied to over 100 jobs in finance and consulting, and I couldn't get a single one. And so I was forced to revisit entrepreneurship. I didn't plan on swimming against the current. That's kind of the direction that I was pulled in, but I'm really grateful. If I could speak to my younger self candidly, I would tell him to step outside of the obvious path into the unknown and to pursue it with everything you've got. Lesson number 4, you build a reputation by doing. Back when I was just a sophomore, freshman at Yale, I would do the boring work that no one else wanted to do, namely filling out forms so we could get money. But it was because I spent hours talking to the Yale College Council Finance Committee that we ended up with hundreds of dollars and the opportunity to travel all over the Northeast, New York, Boston, Rhode Island, Connecticut, competing in these amazing breakdance competitions. Honestly, to this day, those are some of my happiest memories from college. Even more importantly, this reputation completely shifted my own perception of myself. I got way more confident as an entrepreneur because I was doing entrepreneurial stuff. And just last month, I was in New York talking to one of my Yale breakdance buddies. He said, "I'll never forget the day Kev arrived. Man, those were the glory days. We had money to go to jams. Events were springing up every semester. Things just started happening." Your reputation will follow you long after you graduate. People will continue to talk about you, respect you, seek you out because of what you did in the past. That's facts. The power of studying abroad. The summer between my freshman and sophomore year, I ended up working in Salta, northern Argentina. And that's where I met my wife, the love of my life. While I was there, a lot of my preconceived notions about American culture, love, and identity were significantly challenged. Like, my Argentinian host family did not eat dinner. That was a surprise. Instead, they had this huge lunch, and then they would take a nap, and they had like a tiny dinner of maybe like a few crackers. Also, their entire schedule was insane. Like, my Argentinian host sisters both would wake up around 9. They would work a job until the afternoon. They would take a light nap, and then they would go and work at this club, which, by the way, these Argentinian clubs, these boliches, as they call them, they open around 11 or 12, and they will keep partying and dancing until 4, 5, 6 in the morning. When I went to Argentina all those years ago, I still had to pay for my own airfare, which was quite a struggle back then. But I promise you, right now, at your current university, there's a bunch of programs that will cover everything. At Yale, for instance, there's the Light Fellowship, where students can go to East Asia, China, Korea, Japan, and study abroad for a semester, a summer, or even an entire year. Some of my friends took advantage of this, and they couldn't speak any Korean, any Japanese. They came back completely fluent, usually because they had met a significant other while abroad. It was completely free. Another one of my friends decided to travel to Europe, Central and Latin America, parts of Asia as well, all on Yale's dime. Another friend of mine did this program called Semester at Sea, and she was on this ship, got to go to South Africa and Brazil and parts of Asia, again, completely free. Please do yourself a favor. Just take a few hours to write a few essays, look into a few of these programs, because you could end up legitimately traveling the world for free. Some of the best connections I made at Yale weren't with classmates. They were with professors who saw my potential before I did. Some of my most precious interactions came with Professor Kim, a first-year faculty member from Duke. Which, by the way, this is a cheat code. Try not to chase after the big kahunas, like these Nobel Prize winning professors. They're focused on their research, and I promise you, they won't give you the time of the day. Instead, you want to talk to new faculty. New in the sense that they might be very young, fresh out of grad school, and it might be their first or second year being a professor. Or also new in the sense that maybe they were a professor and have taught for 5-10 years at a different institution, but now they're coming to your college for the first time. Those people are pretty desperate for human connection, and they want to talk to amazing students like yourself. That's exactly what happened with Professor Kim. He was an older dude, had been a monk for a long time, was bald, but he had taught at Duke for many, many years. And so I took his Buddhism course, and I just, from the get-go, loved his energy, loved the way that he taught, using a lot of parables and anecdotes. And the moment I showed up to his office, I kind of realized how desperate he was for human interaction, because they stuck him in this sad underground room with a ton of cabinets and no natural lighting. I just talked to him about my business and my passion for entrepreneurship, breakdancing, how we both ended up in Yale. And even after finishing his class, we still kept in touch, and I would invite him out for some lunches here and there. We would eat at these food carts by the Yale ice rink. I remember it just like yesterday. And we would talk about life. He would tell me more about his kid and his wife. And then when time came to pay, we'd fight over the bill as Asian people do. Fast forward a few years later, and I needed some help applying to this pretty prestigious program called the Schwarzman Scholars. You get a master's degree and the chance to study at Tsinghua University all for free. And that's when I ringed up my old buddy, Professor Hwan-Soo Kim. And we were boys. Like, he didn't just write me a banger rec letter, it got me emotional. He let me add anecdotes, and he would show me his draft, and we work on it collaboratively. And that's the kind of relationship that you want with, at least one professor before you graduate. So professors, don't sleep on them. Finally, lesson number 7. Self-worth isn't earned, it's remembered. At the end of my junior year, I was tapped for a secret society at Yale. So let me tell you a little bit about them, since people are always asking me questions. What are the secret societies like? Which one were you in? At Yale, there are 3 types of secret societies, and they're usually for seniors, mainly one-year society. The 3 types of societies are bio societies, debate societies, and party societies. Pretty much exactly what they sound like. However, a bio society, which is what I was part of, bio is short for autobiography. So there are usually 10 to 12 members in a secret society, and in a bio society, everybody shares their life story. Usually you meet twice a week. On Sundays and Thursdays, someone from the group shares their entire life story, and this can take 3 hours, 4 hours, sometimes more, sometimes less. The other day of the week, usually party too. And you join because somebody in the year above you taps you, and there's like a fun selection process. It really varies from society to society. The one I was a part of is called Spade and Grade, and it was made in competition with Skull and Bones, which is like the super duper famous secret society that some presidents were a part of. There are I want to say less than 10 really important landed societies at Yale, which means they have their own tomb. That means they have a physical building on campus, which is pretty wild, if you ask me. The secret part of the society is that you can't share what other people talked about during their bios. So I'll keep it relatively vague. But the main idea here is that getting into Yale, I placed so much emphasis on achievement. And I thought success was about getting things done and proving your worth to society. How much money you made, how many people you've helped, your scale, your impact. As I was hearing these different people's stories, I realized that there's just so many different ways to evaluate success, especially once you get to that college level. I mean, there were some people like these private school girls who sometimes get such a bad rep. I swear, guys, they would have absolutely put my work ethic to shame. They worked so much harder than me. They were so much kinder than me. I'll never forget also talking to one student athlete, and he was recruited and he played lacrosse. He literally warmed the bench for 4 years at Yale and didn't really have much playing time. But this guy in my secret society was known as the most cheerful, the best spirited member of the team. The way that he would support the stars on the team and let others take the spotlight. Honestly, it's kind of making me a little bit emotional. But I just had my entire worldview challenged, where growing up in this Asian American immigrant culture, I was kind of conditioned to believe that success was all about achievement, or something along the lines of growth, evolution, right? Becoming better and better each and every day. There's some people who are not obsessed with accomplishing many things, and they just want to be a good person, or They prioritize process more than results. And that is a completely valid way of looking at life too. And I wish I had learned that earlier. That's something that you might hear, but it can be very hard to understand until you've experienced it, until you've truly listened to what life has been like for someone else. So my takeaway is this: goodness matters more than intellect. The other surprising thing about Yale, especially coming from Exeter, which, used to be ranked as the #1 high school, not just in America, but arguably the world, is that the kids at Yale were not as smart as the kids at Exeter, in my opinion. The kids at Exeter just had higher IQ and were more geniuses, I guess you could say. But the students of Yale are very kind and they prioritize action. In short, the main message I want to impart with you guys today is that self-worth is not about checking boxes or winning prizes. It's about presence, kindness, and contribution. In fact, that's kind of why I started this channel. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you at the next one.